Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're going exploring the path to happiness, and we'll be using the Almanack of Naval Ravikant as our guide for this deep dive.
It's really chock full of great stuff.
It is, and we're going to be focusing mostly on the second part of the book, which really dives deep into this whole concept of happiness.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of the latter half of the book.
Yeah, and, one quote that I found particularly intriguing, and we can kind of circle back to this later, is this idea that to find a worthy mate, be worthy of a worthy mate.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And I feel like that really connects to Naval's whole philosophy and really what we're going to be digging into today.
For sure. And before we even get into that too deeply, I think it's important to kind of understand a bit about where Naval's coming from,
Right.
his background.
Yeah.
He had this really incredible journey from growing up in poverty in India to becoming this like Silicon Valley icon.
Yeah, he's like the epitome of the American dream in a way.
Right. Totally. And that's what makes his perspective on happiness so compelling, right?
Right.
He's not just talking about it from this ivory tower.
Anyway.
He's actually walked the walk, both in terms of worldly success, but also, inner transformation.
Yeah, and I think that's what gives him so much credibility
Totally.
when he talks about these things.
Yeah, and one of the core beliefs that really stood out to me in the book is this idea that happiness is learned.
Yeah.
It's not something you're just born with. It's not like some innate trait that some people have and others don't.
That's right.
It's actually a skill
Okay.
that you can cultivate and develop over time.
So that's really empowering, right?
Absolutely.
It means that we're not just at the mercy of our genes or, our circumstances.
Exactly.
We actually have agency in creating our own happiness.
It's like building mental fitness.
Totally. Yeah, it's like working out a muscle.
Exactly. And just like physical fitness, it requires effort
Right.
and consistency.
Yeah, and it's not always easy, right?
Right. Like sometimes you got to push yourself.
Absolutely. And Naval outlined several key principles for kind of developing this happiness muscle.
Okay. I like that happiness muscle.
And they're surprisingly practical.
Okay, so let's unpack some of those principles.
Okay, sure.
What really jumped out at me was his emphasis on happiness being a choice.
Okay.
Like, he really argues that you actively cultivate happiness. You don't just wait for it to happen.
Yeah, you don't just stumble upon it.
Right.
You have to make a conscious decision to be happy.
Right.
And I think that's a really powerful shift in perspective.
Totally. Yeah, it's like flipping the script on how we usually approach change,
Yeah.
Usually we're trying to change the world around us
Yeah.
to fit our expectations of, how we think things should be.
Mm-hmm.
But what Naval is saying is that we need to focus on changing ourselves first.
It's an inside-out approach.
Yeah. So instead of trying to force the world to conform to our expectations, we focus on shifting our internal landscape.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, but how do we actually do that?
Well, he points to the power of presence,
Okay.
being fully engaged in the present moment.
Okay.
He believes that's crucial for happiness
Mhm.
because, dwelling on past regrets
Yeah.
or worrying about the future just keeps us stuck in this cycle of negativity.
It's like that Buddhist concept of mindfulness,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like letting go of attachment to these fleeting thoughts and emotions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, Naval himself talks about how letting go of anger and resentment was this major turning point in his own journey to happiness.
Oh, wow.
He realized that holding on to those negative emotions
Yeah.
was actually holding him back from experiencing true joy and fulfillment.
That makes sense. It's
Yeah.
like they were weighing him down.
Totally. And it's not just him. This seems to
Yeah.
be like a common thread in a lot of wisdom traditions, right? Like
Mhm.
clinging to negativity, whether it's from the past or worries about the future,
Yeah.
it just breeds unhappiness.
Right. And it's so easy to get caught up in that, right?
It is.
Especially in today's world with everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And this leads to another fascinating point that Naval makes. This idea that desire is often disguised unhappiness.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's kind of a paradox, right?
Yeah.
Because we're constantly bombarded with messages about chasing our dreams.
Yeah.
Wanting more, striving for bigger and better things.
Right. Like that's the whole American dream.
Exactly.
It's the pursuit of happiness.
But Naval cautions us about getting caught on what he calls the hedonic treadmill. The hedonic treadmill.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of that?
I have.
Yeah.
But maybe you can break that down a bit for our listeners.
Sure. So it's basically the idea that we constantly adapt to our circumstances.
Okay.
So even when we achieve something we've been desiring,
Yeah.
like that initial happiness fades pretty quickly,
Oh, well.
and we find ourselves wanting more.
Right, so it's like you're always chasing that next high.
Exactly.
You're never truly satisfied.
It's like running on a treadmill. You're expending a lot of energy, but you're not really getting anywhere in terms of lasting happiness.
That's such a great analogy.
It really is.
It really paints a picture of like what's happening.
Yeah, it's like we're stuck in this loop
Right.
of always wanting more, never really appreciating what we have.
And that ties back to what you were saying earlier about clinging to desire
Exactly.
and external validation. Like,
Yeah.
we think those things will bring us happiness,
Right.
but they often leave us feeling empty and unfulfilled.
It's like a false promise
Right.
that never really delivers.
Exactly.
And it's not that all desire is bad.
Okay.
It's more about being mindful of the kind of desires we're chasing. Like,
Mhm.
are they driven by ego,
Okay.
comparison, a sense of lack?
Right.
Or are they aligned with our values and what truly matters to us?
That's such an important distinction.
It is.
Yeah, so how do we shift from chasing those fleeting pleasures
Right?
to cultivating a more stable sense of happiness?
That's $1 million question.
I know Naval is a big believer in the power of habits.
Oh, absolutely he is.
Like, he emphasizes that small, consistent actions can compound over time
Right.
and have a profound impact on our well-being.
Exactly. It's not about making these huge, drastic changes.
Yeah.
It's about focusing on those little things.
Like what kind of things?
Well, things like avoiding excessive social media,
Hmm.
prioritizing sleep,
Yeah.
nurturing meaningful relationships.
Okay.
These are all habits that can contribute to a happier, more fulfilling life.
It's like making deposits into your happiness account.
Right. I love that analogy.
Each positive action, no matter how small it is,
Yeah,
adds up over time.
exactly. And those deposits build up this reserve of resilience and well-being
Okay.
that can help us navigate life's inevitable challenges.
Right, because let's face it, life is going to throw us curveballs.
Oh, for sure.
We're not always going to be happy.
Right.
But it's about having those tools
Mm-hmm.
and those resources,
In strength.
yeah, to be able to bounce back
Absolutely.
from those difficult times.
Resilience is key.
Speaking of challenges, Naval also talks about the importance of acceptance.
Yes.
Not resignation,
Right.
but acknowledging what we can't control.
Exactly. There's this real sense of freedom
Okay.
in letting go of the need to control everything.
Yeah.
When we accept that some things are simply beyond our influence,
Right.
we free up energy to focus on what we can actually change.
It's about choosing our battles wisely, right?
Exactly.
Focusing on our sphere of influence, as they say.
And this brings us back to that intriguing quote we mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah. To find a worthy mate, be worthy of a worthy mate.
Right. It's not just about relationships, though. It's
Hmm.
about life in general.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection here.
Yeah.
We've been talking about inner work,
Mm-hmm.
about cultivating happiness from within.
Right.
Is that what Naval means by being worthy?
Absolutely. He's saying that the foundation of a fulfilling relationship,
Okay.
or any meaningful endeavor for that matter, starts with becoming the best version of yourself.
Hmm.
It's about aligning your actions with your values, developing your character, pursuing your passions.
So it's not about trying to mold yourself
No,
into what you think someone else wants.
exactly.
It's about authentically becoming who you're meant to be.
It's about self-discovery.
Right. And when you
Mhm.
do that, when you focus on your own growth and well-being,
Mm-hmm.
you naturally attract people and opportunities that are aligned with your true self.
It's like that saying, water seeks its own level,
I love that.
right?
Yeah.
And, Naval doesn't just talk about these concepts in abstract terms.
Yeah.
He gets very specific about practices that can help cultivate inner peace and strength.
What kind of practices are we talking about?
Well, he talks about the benefits of meditation
Hmm.
and mental toughness exercises.
Okay, now I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so for example, he talks about the benefits of cold showers.
Oh, cold showers. Okay.
Yeah. Inspired by the Wim Hof method.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
It's about pushing past your comfort zone,
Yeah.
building resilience, taking control of your physiological responses.
That sounds intense.
It can be, but it's also incredibly invigorating.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And, it ties back to that idea of happiness being a choice.
Okay.
Even something as simple as taking a cold shower
Right.
can be a microcosm of that choice,
Yeah.
choosing discomfort in the short term for potential long-term benefits.
So it's like training our minds to be more resilient,
Exactly.
to not shy away from challenges.
Exactly, to embrace them,
Yeah.
to line into discomfort.
As we wrap up this part of our deep dive into Naval's philosophy,
Right?
I can't help but think about how all these ideas connect.
Yeah,
It's not just a random collection of tips or tricks.
right.
It's a coherent system for living a more fulfilling life.
That's a philosophy
Yeah, it really is.
for living a good life.
And it all comes back to that fundamental idea.
What's that?
Happiness is a skill. And it's a skill that we can all learn and develop.
It's never too late to start.
Right. And that's such an optimistic message, I think.
It is.
It gives us hope
For sure.
that no matter where we are in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
we can always make choices that lead us towards greater happiness.
I think that's a great place to leave it for now.
I agree.
We've covered a lot of ground,
We have, and there's so much more to explore in Naval's work.
but we'll save that for another time,
Yeah, so stay tuned for the next part of our deep dive
where we'll delve even deeper into Naval's philosophy.
and uncover more practical insights for cultivating lasting happiness.
Can't wait.
Me neither. This is fascinating stuff.
It really is.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Catch you next time.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like we're constantly seeking that next hit of dopamine.
right. And it's never enough.
Never enough.
And that's a recipe for unhappiness.
Absolutely, because you're always chasing something,
Yeah, you're never fully present.
never content with what you have.
So how do we break free from that cycle?
Well, Naval suggests that one of the keys is to cultivate a sense of gratitude,
Okay.
appreciating what we already have.
Yeah, like counting our blessings, as they say.
Exactly. And it sounds simple, but it's really powerful.
Right, because it shifts our focus from what we lack
Mm.
to what we already have.
So the abundance in our lives.
And that can have a profound impact on our happiness.
It's like retraining our brains to see the good.
Right, to
Mhm.
focus on the positive.
Another important aspect of Naval's philosophy is this idea of building wealth,
Okay.
but not just financial wealth.
Hmm.
He talks about building wealth in all areas of life.
Like what kind of wealth are we talking about?
Well, things like health,
Okay.
relationships,
Mhm.
knowledge,
Mhm.
skills.
Okay, so it's like a holistic approach to wealth.
Exactly. It's about creating a life of abundance,
Yeah, where you feel fulfilled in all areas.
not just financially, but emotionally,
Right.
spiritually even.
And that ties back to that idea of being worthy, right?
Absolutely, because when you're investing in yourself,
Yeah.
when you're building wealth in all these different areas,
Mhm.
you become a more attractive person.
In all senses of the word.
Not just physically,
Right.
but, intellectually, emotionally.
Yeah, you radiate a certain energy
Totally.
that draws people to you.
And opportunities.
Right? It's like you become a magnet for good things.
And, another thing that Naval emphasizes is the importance of building specific knowledge.
Specific knowledge.
Yeah, it's basically the kind of knowledge that's hard to come by
Okay.
and can't easily be replaced.
So like specialized skills or expertise.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
about finding your unique niche,
Okay.
the thing that you're passionate about
Yeah.
and excel at.
So it's like finding your zone of genius.
Totally. And when you have specific knowledge, you become invaluable.
Right, because you have something to offer that no one else does
Exactly. And that gives you leverage.
in the marketplace.
And in life in general.
So it's not just about making money, right? It's about creating value.
Yeah. And making a contribution.
Right. And that can be a source of deep satisfaction and fulfillment.
Absolutely. Because you're using your unique talents and abilities
Yeah, to make a difference in the world.
to leave your mark.
And I think that's ultimately what we all want, right?
I think so.
To feel like our lives have meaning and purpose.
And to make a positive impact.
And you know what's so great about Naval's approach is that he doesn't shy away from the tough stuff.
What do you mean?
Like, he acknowledges that life can be hard,
Yeah.
that there will be
Well,
challenges and setbacks.
That's part of the journey.
But he also emphasizes that we have the power to choose how we respond to those challenges.
To cultivate resilience.
Exactly.
Bounce back stronger.
And I think that's a really empowering message,
It is.
especially in times like these,
When it's easy to feel overwhelmed.
and discouraged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we're not victims of our circumstances.
Right.
We have agency.
We have the power to create our own reality.
And that's a really beautiful thing.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive so far.
It has.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface of Naval's philosophy.
Oh, yeah. There's so much more we could talk about.
But I think we've covered some really key concepts.
For sure.
And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired
Me too.
to take action in their own lives.
To create their own happiness.
So if you're enjoying this deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
be sure to stay tuned for the next part
Where we'll explore even more of Naval's wisdom.
and uncover more practical tips for living a more fulfilling life.
Can't wait.
Me neither. This is fascinating stuff.
It really is.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Catch you next time. Yeah, and one thing I keep coming back to is that quote we talked about earlier about finding a worthy mate.
Right. To find a worthy mate, be worthy of a worthy mate.
Exactly. And it's not just about romantic relationships.
Okay.
It applies to all areas of life.
How so?
Well, it's about this idea of attracting what you project. Like, if you want to attract abundance,
Yeah.
you need to embody abundance.
So it's about aligning your internal state
Mm-hmm.
with your external desires.
Exactly. And that goes for everything.
Relationships, career.
Finances, health.
It's like that whole law of attraction thing.
Right, like attracts, like...
But it's not just about thinking positive thoughts.
No, it's about taking action.
Right, about actually becoming the person you want to attract.
And that takes work.
It does.
It's an ongoing process.
But it's so worth it.
Absolutely, because when you're aligned, when you're living in integrity,
Yeah?
things just start to flow.
It's like the universe conspires to help you.
Totally.
And you know what else Naval talks about that I found really interesting?
What's that?
He talks about the importance of building judgment.
Okay.
And he believes that reading is one of the best ways to do that.
Oh, for sure. Reading exposes us to different perspectives.
Right.
Helps us develop critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
Expands our understanding of the world and ourselves.
And he's not just talking about reading anything right.
Right. He emphasizes seeking out high-quality sources.
Yeah, like timeless wisdom.
Exactly.
The books that have stood the test of time.
So it's about being discerning with our information intake.
Absolutely.
Choosing sources that will nourish our minds and help us grow.
It's like feeding our brains a healthy diet
I like that analogy.
instead of junk food.
Right. And, I think that's something we could all benefit from.
Sure.
Being more mindful of what we're consuming.
Not just in terms of food
Right. But also information.
and media.
Because it all has an impact on our well-being.
On our happiness.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Naval's philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
I want to leave our listeners with this thought.
Okay.
What if dedicating just 30 minutes a day to reading could significantly impact your happiness in the long run?
It's a small investment with potentially huge returns.
Right.
It's about feeding our minds with knowledge, insights, new perspectives, which can ultimately lead to a richer and more fulfilling life.
And who knows, maybe even a happier one.
If you want to continue exploring these ideas for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
we highly recommend checking out the Almanack of Naval Ravikant.
It's a treasure trove of wisdom.
And we think you'll find it to be a valuable companion on your own journey to happiness.
Until next time, keep those minds curious.
Those hearts open.
And remember, your happiness is a journey, not a destination.
And as Naval reminds us,
It's a journey best undertaken with a good book in hand.
happy reading, everyone.